out there, and of course we expect it to stay windy and rainy through Friday, although maybe some indications that the windiest and wettest of the weather will end earlier Friday versus later. But first, let's start with a given bit of good news, and that is that this hurricane, which was once a Category 4, nearly a Category 5, as forecast, but still it's nice to see, is down to a Category 2, winds of 105 with some higher gust. Now, to put this in perspective, it may not sound like much, but each category of a hurricane is an exponential difference in damage. In other words, a Category 2 is going to have 10 times the amount of damage potentially as a 1. Or we could go the other way, that a Category 4 had 10 times more the damage of a Category 3, and then on down to 2, and so on and so on. So still powerful, but even already now, nothing like the hurricane it was at 3:10 when it moved ashore there on the southwest Florida coast. We will get a new cone of concern in tonight at 11 o'clock. But for now, we don't see any indications that there's going to be a major shift, if anything. And I hesitate to put too much of a positive trend on just a few hours. But if anything, this is a little right of the forecast track. And anything farther off to the right at this point would be helpful to those of us here on the First Coast. Maybe not necessarily so much to South Carolina, because the longer this stays over the ocean, then it might become stronger as it heads towards South Carolina. But again, with more confidence that it is going to go by us as opposed to come right up the coast. None of this is a given. We'll keep a close watch on it. We're still talking about a lot of energy out here. There's something else I want to look at that forecasters here on the weather team that we're noticing. We've talked about some dry air could get into the system. In fact, it's really been part of the forecast that it's going to weaken significantly, and it certainly has. And that trend will continue to weaken significantly because not only is it over land, but there's a lot of dry air, not just at the surface, but up to about 15 to 20,000 feet over the southeast, that the very hurricane, because it's so strong, has actually pulled into it. Notice how more of a curvature, but even here we're beginning to lose some of that curvature, but still pretty symmetrical to the south, to the east, to the north, and even to the northwest. But if you look at trend here, you can see this is an infrared satellite picture. But it becomes almost flattened there. And that's a sign, that's a pretty strong sign of dry air coming in, not just at the lower levels, but up at about 15 to 30,000 feet. Now, the reason that's significant, and it probably makes sense, at least as far as, okay, it's drier, so less in the way of rain, although there's still a ton of rain on the way, but also drier air is going to cause evaporation within the system. That's going to cause cooling, and this is a heat engine. So again, that's adding to the fact that it's over land. But I don't want to at all mislead you, folks. We still have a lot of rain on the way, that this is really just the beginning as far as the rain is concerned, and the strong northeast winds will continue, and thus that's why I think it's pretty close to say this is an Irma-like system, at the very least, meaning it's the combination of the onshore winds out of the northeast and then the gradual accumulations of the rains that we're most concerned about. I want to talk a little more about the dry air. Remember the dew point? We say it's the decider. These dew points continue to drop, and because of the hurricane, pulling that dry air actually into it. Now, the northeast winds are trying to bring in the moisture, the warmer air off the ocean, but even at Mayport now, surf temperature is 81 degrees, and yet the dew point at Mayport is 69, Palatka 68 degrees. All of this is helpful. I'm not saying it's going to put an end to the flooding threat at all, but I'm saying is it could keep the numbers, well, actually closer to what we've been forecasting. So here's what we think will happen. The dry air is going to continue to get wrapped into the system. Notice how it becomes very what we call asymmetrical. In fact, almost like looking like a frontal system, which is why I've drawn it this way. Okay, so what does all this mean? This really just supports pretty much our forecast, folks, that if you've been with us over the last several days. So the highest risk of flooding because of the heavy rains, because of the onshore winds, that's going to be with tonight's high tide at about 1 a.m., and we'll break it down for you whose high tide is where. And then that'll be the first of 3 high tides. And I think with each high tide, the accumulation of the water rushing in from the ocean and the heavier rains will make each high tide the worst. So we think the worst combination of highest winds and the heavy rains will add up to about a 4-foot rise in the water levels. It's going to vary a little bit in different locations, but think about 4 feet. Okay, so county by county, St. Johns and Flagler still looking for you to have the most amount of rain and the most frequent gusts to near 70. St. Johns, or that is Clay and Putnam, Also significant rains because you're closer to that system, even though it's weakening as it heads to the north. Keeping a close watch on Black Creek. Some of this information might help with Black Creek. There's Duval. Again, these are all similar numbers. We're watching for those of you over southeastern Georgia, but really looking like positive trends for those of you out toward the Suwannee and up toward the Okefenokee. But still a lot of rain out there, many more storms to come, and we're going to have a look at that from meteorologist Michaela Lucero.
Thank you. Yep, and you were just talking about the Black Creek River. So let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So this map that we're looking at here, this is for the North Fork of the Black Creek River near Middleburg. So this is an area where we have a lot of residential homes. Here's what I want you to watch out for. So we did just get an update saying that we do have a flood warning for that area. And this is a map of from the National Weather Service that shows where the river's been and what it's forecasted to do. So here's where the river has been for the last several days at about just a little over 2.5 feet. Now it starts to get into flood stages around 11 feet. Now here's what we're forecasting from the National Weather Service. It is getting close, dangerously close to major flood status. So if you live along the North Fork of the Black Creek River, be aware that we are expecting some significant flooding from that area over the next couple of days. All right, let's talk radar and talk about where this storm is and where it is going to be going. So satellite and radar, a big picture of where Hurricane Ian is right now. It's still moving into areas like Tampa and just to the north of Port Charlotte. It has moved out, at least the heaviest rain has moved out of that area. A closer look, places like Sebring. That's an area that's getting very heavy rainfall right now. Fort Meade as well, seeing some a good amount of moderate rainfall. Getting closer to our area, I want you to notice, yes, we're seeing rainfall, but it is nowhere near the rainfall rates that many of the areas in South Florida are seeing. So a closer look at some of our areas. We're going to go county by county here. So we've got Flagler County, Putnam County here, and we're seeing widespread showers and isolated pockets of that heavier rainfall. Not seeing a whole lot of thunder and lightning along with this, so that tells us that there's not a ton of that energy that we need to get severe storms. So no thunder and lightning, but still a good amount of rainfall. Now, even though it's not necessarily heavy rain that we're seeing, it's been steady rainfall all day long today. So that is something that's going to influence the flooding threat. It's the steady rainfall that we've been seeing. Into St. Johns County, places like St. Augustine, World Golf Village. St. John's getting just a tiny break from the rain, but there's more on the way. Nocatee, Durbin as well, seeing widespread showers, and that's really the story. Duval County, Jacksonville, Mayport, Oakleaf, Baldwin, showers across the region. A few breaks here and there. Nassau County, dry for now, but more rain is on the way. Our far western counties, it's been a pretty quiet day for you. Columbia County, portions of Baker County as well, Union, doing okay for now. Haven't seen a whole lot of rainfall or a whole lot of accumulation. Same goes for many of our counties in southeast Georgia, Charleston County, Ware County as well. Places like Brunswick, Folkston, Waycross, doing okay. Still cloudy. There's still rain on the way, but haven't seen a ton of accumulation. As far as accumulation goes, getting close to about 1.5 inches in St. Augustine, just over 1 inch for Palatka. Those are some of our spots that have seen the most rain. That Palm Coast reader must be out for today. They've definitely seen more rain than that. Current wind speeds right now coming from the north, northeast, anywhere from about 25 to some spots 44 miles an hour. Those winds are very strong, and these are sustained winds. When we talk about wind gusts, even worse than that, 56 miles at Mayport, 38 at St. Augustine, Keystone at 29, Palatka feeling winds at about 31. So let's do a quick recap of what we're going to be seeing for tonight. Notice as we move throughout the rest of our overnight hours, heavy rainfall starts to move into our far southern counties. But like Tim was talking about, we're going to get some dry air pulling in. So it is going to help some of our counties more to the western half of our area not see quite as much of that heavier rainfall because of that dry air pulling in. And then that system, like we saw with the cone, it's going to start to shift off back into the Atlantic and take the heavy rainfall and the tornado threat along with it. Gusty winds will still be an issue. So if you are out on the roadways late Wednesday into Thursday, you're going to be driving in not only very heavy rainfall, but also very gusty winds. And we all know Jacksonville, we've got a lot of bridges, so be extra cautious on those rain if you're driving across those bridges in any of that rainfall. Winds still stay pretty gusty. I think 81, 83, I think that is a little overdone, but still be aware that yes, those gusty winds are going to be possible. We're going to continue to have updates every hour on the hour. We'll have them on air and online, and we'll continue to keep y'all updated.